My name is Gaurav Jolly. I work at Slack on the release engineering and the experimentation teams. We are responsible for building tools that help our developers with continuous development and also the rollout of feature flags and experiments. Outside of work, I love sports. In fact, sports has been a passion since I was a little kid. And at that time, cricket used to be my favorite sport. I started playing cricket when I was 3. At 6, I was selected into the school team. At 10, I got selected into the state. But that's when my dreams got shattered. You want to know why? It was all because of a huge sound, which woke me up from my dream. Yes, I was dreaming. In fact, I was never good at cricket. And I could never understand the secret behind what made my friends so successful at cricket. But over the years, I have realized that there are just a few things or few areas where you need to get good at to be good at cricket. These are things like a drive, a cut, a sweep, or a flick. Similarly, the annual DORA State of DevOps report has found that the same is true for engineering, where teams need to just get good at few areas to be great. Now, for those of you who are not sure what the annual DORA State of Web App report is, it is been created by Nicole, Jez Humble, and Gene Kim. These are the guys who have done extensive study on what makes engineering teams great. And as part of this study, they found 4 things that make these teams tick. Number 1, they are able to ship code to production multiple times a day. Also, they are able to ship the code from developer's desktop to production in less than 24 hours. When they ship code to production, it rarely breaks. And 4th is when deploys do break in production, they are recovered very, very quickly by the elite teams. Also, in the research, it was discovered that the elite teams can deploy to production 208 times more than the low-performing teams. In case things break, they can fix them in 2,604 times quicker. Also, the elite teams have 7 times smaller change fail rate. Now, you might ask, do these things matter? The answer is, it does. The research showed that the elite teams have 60% higher revenue, and they are 2.4x times more likely to grow at greater than 20%. But this is not just good for business, this is also good for engineering. The research found that people working on elite teams are 50% less likely to feel burnout. They are happy engineers. Now, this made us curious. How does Slack stand in comparison to these teams? It turns out pretty well. And our secret to these leaps is no secret either. We rely on our own town tool, a mix of channel-based messaging, third-party integrations, and custom apps. And we have been able to uplevel our speed, quality, and visibility of software development. But then the question comes, does it only work for Slack? The answer is no, it works for everyone. In fact, there is a report coming out from Forrester, which is called Total Economic Impact. And the report has found that teams that use Slack see 16% to 19% improvement in each of their dev cycle phases. No matter how many tools you use, which tools you use, Slack can help you. And today, we have 3 very different companies, Etsy, Riot Games, and Slack, who are going to share how they have benefited from usage of Slack. So first, we have Sean from Etsy, who's going to share her story.
Hi, I'm Sean Carney, Director of Engineering at Etsy, and I'm going to talk a bit today about Slack as a critical component at Etsy in our software development lifecycle. Slack sits at the junction of our human systems and our machine systems, connecting the two in meaningful ways that enable speed, quality, and visibility for our test, deploy, planning, and operations processes. The first thing Slack provides is visibility across interconnected parts of these two systems. Slack also helps us synthesize complex information, breaking down silos and connecting the dots between disparate pieces of the whole, allowing us to make effective interventions. And especially in this post-COVID world where we're all working remotely, Slack is a medium in which self-organization and synchronicity often overlap, allowing for both expected and emergent outcomes to arise. With Slack, there's space for engaging with different perspectives across both our human and machine systems, enabling effective feedback loops. And last, but certainly not least, Slack allows us to automate toil, reducing interrupt work and context switching, so engineers can focus on what matters most, whether that's deploying to prod or giving kudos to a teammate. We use Slack to abstract much of this complexity away at Etsy, so our developers can focus their engineering efforts. At Etsy, we believe in code as craft, and as an engineering organization, we embrace an inner source model. This culture helps us increase quality, speed, and developer experience. And in support of this approach, we lean into behaviors and tools that foster transparency, discoverability, and open collaboration. Slack is one of these critical tools. Our code and our culture here at Etsy are interconnected. The act of developing software doesn't just involve machine systems. It requires human systems to create and maintain it. Slack is a linchpin between these two systems. Draper Kaufman, a renowned systems thinker, wrote this in his 1980 paper, Systems 1, An Introduction to Systems Thinking. Quote, dividing the cow in half does not give you two smaller cows. You may end up with a lot of hamburger, but the essential nature of cow, a living system capable, among other things, of turning grass into milk, would be lost. This is what we mean when we say that a system functions as a whole. Its behavior depends on its entire structure and not just on adding up the behavior of its different pieces. Unquote. Each part in each system, whether human or machine, relies to a degree on some or many other parts within one or both of those systems. So to successfully build and scale within this model means we must embrace a level of understanding of the complexity of the whole, stepping back from the legacy siloed approach to view the dynamic and sometimes chaotic totality of the system. Slack enables us to see how each piece works in the bigger picture, to trace the thread of cause and effect, intervening where necessary, to dance the complex footwork required of hundreds of engineers interacting in a choreography of connected systems and processes. In short, Slack gives us the ability of visibility. And with that foundation, our engineers are then able to synthesize across scale. Slack is the medium where machines and people interact, where outputs are analyzed, where divergent thinking flourishes, and the emergence of outcomes often happens. Again, this is even more true now with everyone at our company working remotely during the pandemic. In this graph, you can see our company-wide engagement, which has been consistently pretty high since we adopted Slack. And those little dips you see happen at the end of every year when many of us take a week off before New Year's to spend reflecting and recharging. So let's dig into how we use Slack. We'll start with our chatbot infrastructure and the culture that surrounds it. At Etsy, we rely heavily on chatbots. Our deploy train is run by bots. Jira planning and support tickets can be created or updated through a bot. A variety of alerts are leveraged in our team's channels. And our company culture in many ways leverages these bots to help people socialize with each other and express themselves. While Slack as a platform is owned and supported by an internal team at Etsy, our chatbot development and support has historically relied on a distributed grassroots model. One of the upsides to this is that with no bottleneck to making changes and additions, Etsy's admin get to express their creativity and is given room to flourish and iterate on chat-based solutions faster because they don't need to spin up their own Slack integration to get started. So the barrier for adding new functionality is low. The downside to this is not having a dedicated team when things require attention, so figuring out the tipping point for your organization is critical. When does it make sense to invest in a team whose focus is on productivity and collaboration within your company? It's an important strategic decision that involves a number of considerations, some of which are there critical workflows or tools within those critical workflows that aren't owned by anyone? Is there enough clearly defined work that it makes sense? SaaS management, integrations, and expansion are different from software development and systems administration. Is there an opportunity to free up engineers for software engineering if this work was managed by a specialized team? Do your company values and current or future goals align with what you're trying to support? Is there data that supports this, whether qualitative, like engagement surveys, or quantitative metrics around productivity and engagement? And is the expected or perceived value higher than the cost of investment? So let's take a look at our production systems and how we interact with them in Slack. The deployment process at Etsy is a dynamic interaction between bots and engineers. We strive to streamline it as much as possible through automation. PushBot is our homegrown legacy bot that handles the coordination of pushes. When a developer deploys to Etsy Web, they go to the push channel and use a command to tell the PushBot that they want to join the queue. PushBot's the engine that powers the push train, ensuring that all the appropriate tests have been run and allowing us to enforce some basic ground rules. DevBot is a messenger bot that relays messages from Jenkins and Deployinator, the latter of which is a Sinatra app that we've built that uses a Ruby web framework to orchestrate the deploys of the various stacks we have at Etsy. DevBot pulls down the status of builds, pushes DMs to engineers directly, as well as to our push channel, letting push train members say when they're ready to go and providing the push train leader with status updates. All of our software tests are run in Jenkins, which we interact with in channel. And the Jenkins Slack app collects that information and communicates the status directly in our push channel. At Etsy, we have a suite of over 40,000 tests in our web CI/CD pipeline that run against each code push. We average around 22 pushes a day, and we have the potential to deploy up to 50 times a day. So that's how we interact with deploying to our production systems in Slack. Machine systems are often complicated. Changes here result in outcomes there. And of course, it doesn't always work the way you expect. And there are often multiple right answers, but for the most part, the unknowns are actually knowable. We use Slack to shine a light into these corners. From systems alerting on themselves to humans commenting on their observations, Slack provides the conduit to sense, analyze, and respond in one platform, reducing context switching to focus on the task at hand. We have a number of Slack bots that help us with this, and one of these is our PagerDuty integration, which helps to manage and provide visibility for internal rotations, as well as track the status of alerts. We're transitioning monitoring and alerts from Nagios to Prometheus, and within our chatbot infrastructure, we use various commands to interact with these alerts. They allow us to silence noisy but non-actionable alarms, or to bulk silence in times of large outages, to avoid noise while triaging issues. These can be disk space warnings, queues being filled, CPU utilization spikes, and other things, which ultimately helps improve signal to noise ratio for engineers and allows them to maintain focus. We also have a learn command, which stores and retrieves useful information and helps minimize toil. This is in addition to the Slack workflows that many teams have set up to auto-respond when frequent questions are asked. And there's a Jira module that reduces friction for engineers, because otherwise it would require context switching, opening new windows, and logging into VPN. So Jira Create allows quick ticket creation in channel with options for a variety of parameters. And Jira Ticket Number retrieves the title of the ticket, the current status, and who it's assigned to. There's an announce bot for broadcasting changes. We use an infrastructure announcement channel as a lightweight way to provide visibility into infrastructure changes happening, so people are informed, not policed. This helps engineers debug when things don't work exactly the way we'd hoped to. Our Stack Overflow for Teams integration means that when someone asks a question in a channel, we can add a custom Stack Overflow emoji as a reaction on the message. And that'll either create a draft of the post on our Stack Overflow, or it'll link you to the search results. And this lets our engineers ask questions and share knowledge about our internal systems in channel while storing that information in Stack Overflow for Teams, which reduces repetition and toil. The Snap bot sits in channel and runs code that listens and posts to your Slack team just as a user would. It's great for pulling images and gist code snippets, which lets engineers continue collaborating in the Slack platform instead of having to context switch and copy paste into Slack. It also allows a learn, like I mentioned before, to push a screenshot or text to an internal resource, which otherwise would require a click-through and VPN access. And even when we dip into the occasional chaos of a large-scale event, Slack is there with us, providing a platform for rapid response. During these times, LichBot helps us coordinate our incident management comms process in our War Room channel. As I mentioned before, the act of developing software doesn't just involve machines. It requires humans to create and maintain. And those human systems, by nature, involve a lot of complexity, which Slack helps to navigate. At Etsy, we care deeply about developer experience. We aim to ensure Etsy is the best place for engineers to work. And to do so, we invest in developer productivity, efficiency, and engagement. This involves improving how we can help developers reduce toil, build with data, craft products, and develop, test, and deploy. As we've seen, the Slack platform allows us to make progress towards these goals by automating toil, as we've seen with the bots and the apps that we leverage, which in turn makes our deploy process faster. By creating transparency across teams and systems to make code and ideas more discoverable, which in turn helps improve visibility. And by engaging different perspectives and illuminating context, which in turn improves quality. In addition to all of this, Slack helps us with engagement and community. We have a push citizenship channel to help socialize the etiquette and behavior we want to see in our push process. Our chatbot has a module that we use for giving and sharing pluses as a way to celebrate and thank someone for something. And on top of all that, we have a rich custom emoji culture. Currently, there's over 10,000 emoji at Etsy, and it's a language all on its own, with reactions on PRs being used in our development processes to get eyes on things or acknowledge when something's done. And with everyone work from home currently, some teams are announcing when they're away from their keyboard and then using emojis to signify when they're back. So I hope this has been helpful to show how Slack sits at the junction of our human systems and our machine systems in the software development lifecycle at Etsy, connecting the two in meaningful ways that enable speed and visibility for our plan, test, and deploy processes. To summarize, we saw how Slack provides us with visibility across interconnected parts of these two systems. We saw how Slack helps us synthesize complex information, breaking down silos and connecting the dots between disparate pieces of the whole, allowing us to make effective interventions. And we saw how Slack, as a medium in which self-organization and synchronicity often overlap, allows for both expected and emergent outcomes to arise, especially in this post-COVID world. We saw the ways in which Slack creates a space for engaging with different perspectives across both our human and machine systems, enabling effective feedback loops. And last, but certainly not least, we've seen how Slack allows us to automate toil, reducing interrupt work and context switching, so engineers can focus on what matters most. If you have questions, you can find me on Twitter at Sean Carney or LinkedIn. Thank you for your time, and I hope you learned something that helps you and your teams wherever you are in your journey. Next up is Byron from Riot Games.
Thank you, Sean. Hi, I'm Byron, and I'm going to talk to you about how we use Slack to power the software developer lifecycle at Riot Games. We'll start by giving you a brief history of Slack at Riot, and then dive into some examples of how we leverage Slack to promote build pipeline visibility and automation today. Stick around to the end for information on where to learn more about the technology that powers Riot Games. But first, some quick introductions. My name is Byron Dover, and I'm an engineering manager and team captain of IT applications at Riot Games. I help manage the administration and development of enterprise tooling at Riot, or as we call it, Riot's operating system.
But enough about me. Riot Games was founded in 2006 to develop, publish, and support the most player-focused games in the world. In 2009, we released our debut title, League of Legends, to worldwide acclaim. League has gone on to become the most played PC game in the world and a key driver of the explosive growth of esports. As League enters its second decade, we're continuing to evolve the game while delivering new experiences to players with Teamfight Tactics, Legends of Runeterra, Valorant, Wild Rift, and multiple work-in-progress titles. We're also expanding the world of Runeterra through music, comic books, board games, and the upcoming animated series, Arcane. Slack adoption at Riot goes back several years and started with small pockets of organic usage by Rioters in 2014. Interest quickly grew, and we officially adopted Slack as our primary real-time communications platform in 2015, replacing Atlassian HipChat and IRC at the time. In 2017, we became one of Slack's very first enterprise-grade customers after an extensive early adopter, alpha, and beta testing period. Since then, our usage of Slack has grown dramatically in both raw numbers and complexity, and we're excited to provide a little more insight into some of the ways we're using Slack to accelerate software development at Riot today. Riot supports more than 8,000 Slack users globally and nearly 1,000 installed Slack apps and integrations. The majority of Riot employees and external partners rely on Slack communication and integrations every day to do their jobs. Our Slack app and integrations ecosystem is vast. We rely heavily on custom integrations which meet our strict information security requirements, and a handful of heavily vetted marketplace apps like Google Drive. Slack is a key part of Riot's enterprise strategy in support of our player-focused company mission. Slack helps us streamline game development through a rich ecosystem of apps and integrations, and it expedites incident response, triage, and issue resolution. Slack has had a dramatic effect on engineering productivity at Riot. We've seen a reduction in iteration cycle and bug resolution times, and increases in feature delivery velocity since moving to Slack. Let's dive into how software developers at Riot are using Slack to increase build pipeline speed and visibility. Our first developer highlight comes to us from our Legends of Runeterra team. Legends of Runeterra is a free-to-play digital card game developed and published by Riot in 2020. Legends of Runeterra supports PC, Android, and iOS crossplay, and we've developed a sophisticated build and release pipeline for this game to ensure new versions are available to players simultaneously across all platforms. Behind the scenes, Legends of Runeterra build pipelines are powered by Jenkins and Slack. Riot engineers rely on custom Slack apps to provide insight and visibility into game builds and deploys in real time. When a build starts, a new message is posted to a shared Slack channel and then continuously updated to show build progress through different stages and the results of those stages. When a build fails, an alert is automatically posted to Slack with a detailed accounting of what went wrong. Slack apps even mention the developer responsible for the latest code change to begin immediate triage. These Slack apps are highly interactive, with specific actions available to developers at every step in the form of Slack buttons, dialogues, screens, and workflows. In this way, Slack provides a single pane of glass into the build and deployment lifecycle for our software developers, reducing the need to context switch between a myriad of different continuous integration tools just to understand the status of game builds and releases. Next up, a Slack developer highlight from our Teamfight Tactics team. Teamfight Tactics is a free-to-play auto battler developed and published by Riot last year. Like Legends of Runeterra, Teamfight Tactics also supports PC, Android, and iOS crossplay, and benefits from sharing much of the same infrastructure and build release technology as our flagship MOBA game title, League of Legends. To reduce noise in public channels and possibly some developer embarrassment,
We've developed a Slack app named Game Build and Deploy, or GBAD bot, which sends engineers direct messages when they break a game build and lets them know once they fix the issue. This implementation is a favorite among our R&D teams, who prefer to keep their build notifications out of public channels and can still reap the benefits of automated build and deploy notifications and pipeline integrations via direct messages. Several other game titles are in active development at Riot, including Valorant, our new first-person shooter, which launched this summer. Like Legends of Runeterra, League of Legends, and Teamfight Tactics, these games all rely on Slack for real-time communication and their software development lifecycles. Now, just as important as developing games is ensuring they're up and running when players log on to play. Let's take a look at how Slack helps Riot software developers stay on top of operations and on-call support. Many of our game teams integrate with Sentry for robust crash analytics and diagnostics. Sentry provides a feature-rich Slack marketplace application, which integrates directly with Riot Games operations and monitoring channels. Sentry automatically captures an enormous amount of valuable information whenever a player experiences a game crash, including screenshots and the actions that occurred directly before the crash. A summary of these events is automatically posted to actively monitored Slack channels. On-call engineers can assign crashes to colleagues directly via Slack, click through to learn more, or resolve incidents from Slack as well. Another Slack marketplace app we use heavily is PagerDuty. PagerDuty provides best-in-class incident, service, and escalation policy management, which we ingest directly into Slack for central control and visibility. We route PagerDuty alerts to dedicated notification channels created for each team at Riot. From there, teams can escalate as needed to a universal shared channel across all of our workspaces, which is actively monitored by our global network operations center. We've also built custom applications to augment the on-call support side of the software developer lifecycle. One of our most popular is Riot's developer team support Slack app. This app works by listening for emoji reactions on messages in support channels, and then kicking off a triage workflow whenever the appropriate reactee is used. Reporters are prompted to categorize the issue based on their original message, information which the Slack app uses to automatically notify an on-call engineer from the appropriate team. The Slack app mentions the on-call engineer in a threaded reply, and the conversation continues between the two Rioters in that thread as normal. There are a few advantages to this approach. For one, on-call engineers don't need to monitor or read every message in a support channel. They can trust the support app to mention them in any thread that requires their attention. Once an issue is resolved, the Slack app captures the entire threaded conversation in the appropriate incident management tool. At Riot, that's either Jira or ServiceNow. And it even provides a link to the Slack thread for future reference. Pretty cool stuff. Last but not least, Porobot is one of our newest innovations in Slack support request intake. Porobot is an AI that can be trained to recognize questions asked in Slack channels, triage and classify the support ticket, or provide useful information previously answered by that channel's on-call team. This Slack app integrates with Jira and ServiceNow and leverages a natural language machine learning model behind the scenes for pattern recognition and classification. This app is still relatively new at Riot, and we're excited to continue to push the envelope of what's possible with Slack integrations to improve the software developer lifecycle for Riot engineers and ultimately deliver the best possible gaming experiences to players around the world. Here's a summary of our takeaways. 1, give your developers a single pane of glass into their build pipelines to reduce context switching. Leverage buttons, dialogues, and workflows to enable your developers to take action directly from Slack. Balance the use of public channels and direct messages and integrations in those forums to improve focus and reduce noise. Adopt best-in-class Slack apps like Sentry and PagerDuty to reduce incident resolution time. And automate support intake and on-call assignments so the rest of the dev team can stay focused on feature delivery. If you'd like to learn more about technology at Riot Games, please feel free to check out our technology blog at technology.riotgames.com. You can also reach out to me directly with questions at bdover@riotgames.com. Thank you, and we'll see you on the Rift. Now, I'll hand the mic back to Gaurav, who will take us behind the scenes of how Slack's own release engineering team uses Slack.
Hi again. In case you were not there for the first part of the presentation, my name is Gaurav Jolly. I work at Slack on the release engineering and the experimentation teams. In the remainder of the talk, the intent is to share a few techniques that we use at Slack in our dev lifecycle. And from experience, I feel that these are techniques that are pretty easy to use, but have a high return of investment. As I was thinking about this presentation, I started thinking what would be the good way to start. And pretty soon it was very obvious that the presentation should start with the story of Spider-Man. Peter Parker is a very bright kid. He invented a fluid which he uses to fly across the city. But even for someone like him, he had to be bitten by a radioactive spider for him to get the super strength and the ability to climb buildings, which made him Spider-Man. Now, similarly, I feel that our tools at Slack are pretty good on their own. But what makes our tools super tools is the integration with Slack. Now, in case you're wondering, how does Slack do that? Slack does that by giving our tools superpowers of 3 superheroes. First is the superpower of vision. By providing integrations, channels, and search, and then bringing people together to look at that information, it creates that ability to process information really, really fast. Second is the power of Flash. Every phase of dev lifecycle becomes really fast with Slack. And finally, third is the power of Lockjaw. By transporting people into conversations and providing them with the sense of what's going on with notifications, Slack gives us the power of Lockjaw. Now, before this presentation, I was not aware what Lockjaw is, but I guess having a 7-year-old kid at home does have some advantages. Now, in case you're curious how Slack brings these powers, let's talk to Mario and Charlie. Now, you must be wondering, who's Mario? Who's Charlie? They're both fictitious characters. Mario is a software developer who works on developer tools, while Charlie is his boss's boss's boss. Today, both of them are upset. Charlie is upset because Charlie met with a developer who uses their tool, but that individual gave very bad feedback regarding a few incidents that happened 3 months back. Mario is upset because he has been given the responsibility to figure out what happened. But the issue was about a Jenkins job, which has long been lost. And the history is gone as well. He looked up his emails, he could not find anything. He looked up Jira, he did find a ticket, but it had no context. So now he has sent an email to that developer and is waiting for his feedback. Clearly, this team is disconnected from the customer. Now, since both of these guys are upset, let's leave them alone and let's jump to Slack for a bit. With Slack, possibility of something like this happening is very, very low. Let me illustrate with an example. So at Slack, if you look at the screenshot on the top right corner, it is a screenshot of one of the flows that the developer goes through after he's done with the deployment. Here we are asking them for the feedback on how things went. Now, as the developers give their feedback, it flows directly into Slack. We get to see it immediately. And in case we don't understand something, we ask them then and there and thus build the context. Now, if at any point we feel that this is something which can help us improve our tools, we forward that conversation to our feedback channel. Now, later, when we are doing grooming, at that point, someone is going to look at these. They'll have the full context to make the right decisions. And also, since we have integrations with Jira, tickets can be created right within Slack. And from that point on, the entire progress of that ticket is visible to everyone through notifications. This includes the developer who went through that experience. Now, this is not the only workflow that we use. There are many others, but all of these help us stay connected with our customers and also make the developer tools better. Now, going back to Mario and Charlie, they did find out about that issue. It was something that had already been fixed. So after this, they had an offsite. So both of them went to the offsite. In the offsite, they were all got to play a game. In the game, they were supposed to be blindfolded, and while being blindfolded, they would be given objects which they had to identify. The first object given to them was an elephant. Mario touched the body of the elephant and felt it looked like a wall, while Charlie touched the tail and assumed it was a rope. Similarly, other engineers make incorrect deductions. Issue here is that these guys are clearly working in silos. With Slack, you can break silos of knowledge. Now, at Slack, when we start a project or development, first thing we do is we create a channel. From that point on, all the conversations and people are on that channel, but also other things such as meeting notes and documents are posted in the channel. So everyone has complete visibility into what's going on and are therefore able to give their inputs. Consequently, possibility of us making bad architectural decisions is very, very low. However, sometimes we might work on a big project which impacts a lot other teams. In those cases, also Slack helps because we have naming conventions for our channels and it's easy to find the team that we want to connect with. We can give them a link to our project channel. They can quickly come to the channel, build up context by reading all the information that's there and provide us feedback. This, along with the dedicated channels, helps us again make our designs and implementations really solid, and therefore we have a low change fail rate in production. Dedicated channels have other benefits as well. One of the key benefits is need for meetings is eliminated to a very large extent. Because now, if you need inputs from someone, you can just ping them on the channel. And on the plus side, you'll not just hear from them, you might hear from other developers as well. This speeds up things because you no longer need to wait for meetings. Also, having a common channel creates a sense of common purpose and mission and a feeling of team. We also have integrations with various bots. And one such example is integration with GitHub, where on a pull request, messages are directly sent to our channel. When these messages are sent, it creates visibility and people get the reviews done faster. Therefore, the review cycle keeps moving all the time. And as a result of this, our cycle time improves. Now, after they were done playing the game, Mario and Charlie and the teams started discussing various topics. One of the topics that came up was, who's faster, Flash or Superman? Do you know? I don't know the answer to this question. But what I know is Slack makes other phases and other parts of the life cycle fast as well. For example, when our tests and builds are run, notifications are sent to appropriate channels. These notifications also include information regarding the PRs that were part of that build or test. A consequence of this is that you have the right people, you have the right context, therefore issues get resolved very quickly. And this is another contributor to low cycle time. Flaky tests are the bane of software developers' existence. At Slack, we sent out almost live weather updates about how tests are doing. Now, this has two advantages, one for the developer and one for the owner of the test. For the developer, he doesn't need to waste time looking at extraneous issues, because he can go to this channel, see what tests are flaky, and just care about their work. While for the owner, they get to know about things impacting the test immediately rather than that happening at a later instant of time. Because of this, our pipelines are always moving forward, and the cycle time again is low. Now, they had a good time at the offsite. Mario came back, but he started to notice that one of the metrics was moving in the wrong direction. So he paged the person who could help him. They together started looking at the issue, but after a certain time, they hit a wall and they were not able to figure out. So they called more people, and it was after several hours is when they were actually able to identify the right person and resolve the issue. At Slack, when things are rolled out, we have a channel called deploys where our internal tools, such as Deploy Wizard, send regular updates. In addition to this, whenever someone does something outside of the Deploy Wizard, they post their updates on this channel as well. An example of this could be load and performance test. Now, since updates are always being posted at one place, if something goes wrong, people can always come to this channel, build context around what has changed, and this helps in resolving issues very, very quickly. Also, we have, before the code is pushed to production, it is pushed to dog food, which is our internal staging where developers can actually use the code that is going to go to production. At this stage, if someone finds an issue, they can again go to the deploy channel, get the context, connect with the right people, and issues get fixed very quickly. Now, because of this, the change fail rate becomes very low because issues don't even reach the customers. Finally, as changes are flowing through the deployment pipeline, metrics are generated. These metrics, are visible, but at the same time, if any of the metrics hits the threshold, alerts are generated to appropriate channels. These alerts not only contain notifications, they also contain context around what could have caused the issue. Now, because of both of these, one, notifications going live to the developers who can fix the issue, plus having the context on what caused the issue, helps fix issues very, very quickly. So just to summarize, Slack provides us with 3 superpowers. This makes our tools more effective, increases visibility, and speed and quality of all phases of dev lifecycle. And consequently, this shows up in our engineering metrics. All right, so before concluding, what were the few things that we discussed that help improve speed, quality, and visibility? 1, dedicated channels can improve cycle time and reduce change fail rate. 2nd, connecting DevStack to Slack creates visibility and breaks silos. You can also free up bandwidth for high impact work by automating mundane tasks. And with Slack, problems and solutions get worked in real time. Finally, integrations and channels reduce context switching and therefore help getting problems resolved quickly. And with that, thank you for listening. We'll use the remainder of time to answer any questions that you might have.